Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're skipping the obvious headlines and diving straight into the incredible geography that actually dictates our reality. We are looking at 14 narrow global waterways. These are tiny, totally unassuming lines on a map that secretly hold the true power over our world's entire economic. You might think global superpowers rely entirely on vast armies, sprawling alliances, or nuclear weapons to maintain their dominance. But the reality? The world's pulse is completely geographic. If you were to somehow shut these 14 doors, the global economy wouldn't just slow down, it would literally stop breathing overnight. Hunger could spread across continents, gas pumps would dry up in a matter of days, and the essential medicines we rely on would just simply vanish from pharmacy shelves.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The real global power. 2. The Middle East oil veins. 3. Europe's historic maritime gates. 4. Asia's flashpoints in trade. 5. Connecting the Americas. And finally, 6. The future of global trade. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The real global power. Defining geopolitical choke points.
So let's define exactly what gives these specific geographic locations so much unprecedented leverage. In international relations, these are known as choke points. And the crucial concept to grasp here is that these are tiny, highly vulnerable bottlenecks. If just one of these narrow routes is blocked, whether by an accident, a massive storm, or a conflict, the ripple effect on shipping costs, international inflation, and your daily life is absolutely immediate. They are, quite literally, the arteries of global trade. Sever one, and the whole system bleeds.
Moving to Section 2, the Middle East oil veins, fueling the global economy.
This region is the beating heart of the world's energy supply, and the sheer scale here is absolutely staggering. Get this. More than 30% of the world's oil passes through a single channel called the Strait of Hormuz. It's a tiny, claustrophobic gap between Iran and Oman that's just 33 kilometers wide. In the grand scheme of the ocean, 33 kilometers is practically nothing. Yet, every single day, millions of barrels of oil travel through this exact spot on their way to the US, Europe, and Asia. If that narrow door closes, global gas prices would instantly skyrocket to levels we've just never seen. Next up is Bab-el-Mandeb, a name that ominously translates to the Gate of Tears. It sits right between Yemen and Djibouti. Now, historically, it was famously treacherous for its volatile waves and ruthless pirates, which is how it earned that dark name. But currently, it's a massive geopolitical hotspot. As we've seen with recent Houthi attacks in the region, massive cargo ships are being forced to abandon this route and take costly, weeks-long detours entirely around the African continent. This detour burns massive amounts of extra fuel, adds millions in shipping costs per single trip, and ultimately you and I end up paying for it at the checkout counter through inflation. And honestly, this completely illustrates the immense fragility of these routes. Ships passing through the Gate of Tears usually head straight for the Suez Canal in Egypt, which is a spectacular man-made shortcut linking the Red Sea directly to the Mediterranean. Remember when that massive Ever Given container ship got wedged horizontally and blocked the canal back in 2021? The entire world held its breath. For just 6 days of blockage, it caused a staggering $54 billion economic loss to the global economy. Think about that for a second. 6 days! That is the astonishing power of a single choke point. Let's move to Section 3, Europe's historic maritime gates, access, and continental control. Over in Europe, centuries of history, an unyielding geography intertwine to command massive global trade zones. These are Europe's main gates, and each one tells a total story of survival and power. First, the Strait of Gibraltar, sitting incredibly tight between Spain and Morocco. It controls half of all European-African trade. It is so narrow that on a clear day you can literally see the other continent. Today, the UK maintains a permanent military presence there just to keep it secure. Then there's the English Channel between the UK and France. This is a bustling, chaotic highway seeing over 400 commercial ships every single day. And finally, looking to the east, we have the Turkish Straits. Those Turkish Straits, the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, connect the Black Sea directly to the Mediterranean. This is crucial because most of Russia's other ocean ports freeze over solid during the bitter winter months. So the Black Sea is their year-round lifeline to the rest of the world. By international law, Turkey legally controls these straits, meaning in times of war, Turkey alone has the authority to decide which warships are allowed to pass. It's a profound geographic reality that forces both American and Russian interests to very carefully navigate their diplomatic relationships with Turkey at all times. Next up is Section 4, Asia's flashpoints and trade, the superpower bottlenecks. This region is home to some of the busiest, most commercially vital, and highly contested waters on Earth.
The Strait of Malacca, running tightly between Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia, handles a massive 25% of all global sea trade. It's the primary reason the island nation of Singapore is an absolute economic powerhouse today. They sit right at the gate. But here's the catch. The waters in Malacca are surprisingly shallow. Ships that are simply too massive, like super oil tankers, physically cannot pass through without scraping the bottom. They have to use Indonesia's alternative Lombok Strait, which features much deeper waters. Having control of these deepwater backup routes gives Indonesia immense future geopolitical leverage as ships only continue to grow larger.
For China, keeping the Strait of Malacca open is literally a matter of sheer economic survival. This brings us to a well-known strategic concept called the Malacca Dilemma. China has an explicit, widely studied fear that in a hypothetical conflict, an adversary's navy could blockade this single, shallow strait and completely sever China's vital oil and supply lines in one swift move. It is a major driving force behind why they invest so heavily in alternative overland infrastructure projects. They're basically trying to bypass the ocean entirely.
Moving further north, we find the ultimate, most precarious flashpoint of our modern era, the Taiwan Strait. An astounding 70% of the entire world's microchips originate from Taiwan. We're talking about the tiny components that power your smartphone, your car, your laptop, and the servers that run the internet itself. If any regional conflict were to close this maritime door, global technology production wouldn't just slow down, it would halt immediately. It is far more than just a regional border dispute. It's a global economic trigger waiting to be pulled. And from a purely geographic perspective, there's another fascinating layer here. A massive, natural chain of islands runs straight from the Philippines up through Taiwan all the way to Japan. The water between these islands is largely shallow, which physically blocks Chinese naval submarines from getting direct, undetected deepwater access to the open Pacific Ocean. Submarines need deep water to hide, right? Therefore, the tension over the Taiwan Strait isn't just about microchips or history. It's a fundamental strategic interest for competing superpowers looking for unrestricted ocean access.
Now for Section 5, Connecting the Americas, Engineering and History.
Let's look at how sheer human engineering forcefully altered the geopolitical map. Historically, sailing a ship from New York to San Francisco meant embarking on a massive, deadly, months-long detour all the way around the bottom of South America. Then, humanity built the Panama Canal, and it remains an absolute engineering marvel. Using a highly pressurized waterlock system, it literally lifts steel leviathans up into the air, carries them gently across mountainous inland terrain, and lowers them seamlessly into the next ocean. This rapid link between the Atlantic and Pacific completely revolutionized global trade.
But what exactly happens when human engineering meets the limits of nature? Right now, shifting climate patterns are causing dangerously low water levels in the Panama Canal, meaning fewer and lighter ships can pass. If this vital artery becomes severely restricted, the world might soon be forced to rely once again on the historic Strait of Magellan. This is a treacherous, freezing, and perpetually stormy backup route at the very bottom tip of South America. Nobody wants to use it, it's notoriously miserable and dangerous, but Mother Nature and geography might just force our hand.
Finally, Section 6, the future of global trade, melting ice and redrawn maps.
Let's look ahead to see how climate shifts and new infrastructure are continuously rewriting the map of global power. Remember learning about explorers finding the sea route to India? They sailed all the way around the Cape of Good Hope at the rugged southern tip of Africa. It's not a narrow strait, but rather a massive, unforgiving turning point. As we are currently seeing with the disruptions in the Red Sea, the Cape of Good Hope remains the ultimate, albeit incredibly expensive and time-consuming, backup plan to keep the lungs of global trade breathing when the primary doors are slammed shut.
But looking forward to the next 2 or 3 decades, the melting ice up north in the Bering Strait, situated right between Alaska and Russia, is poised to create a completely new, highly coveted doorway. Once this ancient ice clears, it will open an ultra-fast commercial trade route connecting Asia directly to Europe and the Americas, literally shaving weeks off transit times. Global superpowers are already aggressively preparing, building icebreakers and new ports to secure their influence over this icy passage before it fully opens.
Wrapping up this explainer, the core takeaway is crystal clear. True global control rests on these 14 geographic doors. They directly dictate the flow of our daily goods, the price of our fuel, and our overall global stability. Recognizing this immense vulnerability, it's really no surprise that the United States currently maintains a direct or indirect strategic presence at 10 out of these 14 locations, working to ensure the global order keeps flowing without interruption.
This leaves us with a critical, lasting thought to ponder. As the physical map of our world fundamentally alters with the changing climate, entirely new doors will open, and old ones may lose their value. When that Arctic ice completely melts, who will control the Bering Strait? Whoever secures that new ultra-fast route might just become the ultimate boss of global trade. So how will that shift the balance of power in your lifetime? Thank you so much for exploring the map with me today.